In 1957, amidst dozens of watching eyes Burt Lancaster made, Kirk Douglas burst into tears with just one cold, cruel joke. That was just another chapter in the 40-year-long saga of the volatile relationship between two major stars. They made 7 films together, but also relentlessly pushed each other into tense, suffocating rivalries. And in the end, their friendship burned like a fuse that consumed everything. The genesis of a legend. Burt Lancaster was born in 1913 in a small, impoverished apartment in Manhattan. His father worked for the post office on a meager salary, struggling to support their family of 7. Growing up in the dangerous East Harlem neighborhood, Burt absorbed the strong will of his Irish immigrant family. At just 9 years old, he witnessed a murder firsthand, an image that haunted him for life. Despite a harsh life, Burt found solace in books from the library. But there were times he fell into gang life with the name Red Devils. It wasn't until he discovered the gymnasium at Union Settlement that everything changed. His love for gymnastics made him stand out, and at 16, a circus scout gave him his first opportunity. With his friend Nick Cravat, they formed an acrobat duo living a nomadic life, performing dangerous stunts without safety nets, sleeping in warehouses, and living for the thrill of adventure. Their talent led them to join the prestigious Ringling Brothers Circus. But in 1939, Burt suffered a severe accident, falling from 12 meters. He broke ribs, hit his head hard, and his circus dream ended. During his recovery months, he worked as a singing waiter to make a living and realized audiences liked him not just for his looks, but for the fiery energy that burned within. By 1943, amidst World War II, Burt enlisted. Older than his comrades, his physical strength and courage made him stand out. He performed for the troops, experiencing the joy of the stage for the first time, and also fought in real combat. During the Battle of the Bulge, he single-handedly captured a German machine gun post, a heroic act he rarely spoke of. After the war, Burt lived with the intricate memories of the battlefield. But it was these very memories that helped him deeply embody his roles in war films. The turning point came when a stage producer discovered his untapped talent. At 32, Burt landed his first role on Broadway, paving the way for a golden opportunity in Hollywood. Although his first audition at Universal was not smooth, stiff, awkward, and inexperienced, producer Mark Hellinger saw talent in him. Burt was cast in The Killers, and when the film premiered, audiences were captivated by his portrayal of Swede, a strong, tragic, wildly intense boxer. The film was a smashing success. Burt immediately became a phenomenon with an enormous salary and thousands of fan letters sent in the first week alone. The self-taught man in glamorous Hollywood, Burt Lancaster entered the world of cinema almost empty-handed, with no experience and no formal training. On his very first film set, he had to learn how to stand and look correctly. But he observed, memorized every detail, and progressed surprisingly fast. He devoured old films, watched behind the scenes, and learned the workings of an entire filmmaking machine. Before long, he started producing his own films. Unlike actors who relied on raw emotion or elaborate techniques, Burt acted on instinct. He analyzed scenes and used his entire body to convey emotion. Because of this, he could transform from a vibrant pirate in The Crimson Pirate to a profound army sergeant in From Here to Eternity. His kiss with Deborah Kerr amidst the ocean waves became an immortal icon. But Burt didn't stop at acting. In Elmer Gantry, he dared to embody a deeply conflicted preacher and won an Oscar for that controversial role. He established his own production company to control his destiny at a time when most actors were still bound by rigid contracts. With Hecht Hill Lancaster, he produced Marty, a small film that went on to win 4 Academy Awards. Films with strong political and social messages began to emerge, although he often paid for them with money and time. Nevertheless, Lancaster helped change the landscape of Hollywood. Roles like the bird-loving prisoner in Birdman of Alcatraz and the judge in Judgment at Nuremberg continued to elevate him to the pinnacle. By the mid-1960s, Burt was one of the highest-paid faces in the world and a symbol of creative courage. When two suns collide, Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. In 1947, Burt Lancaster first collaborated with Kirk Douglas in I Walk Alone. Both were relatively new to Hollywood, yet each carried a uniquely challenging path. Burt had been a circus acrobat while Douglas trained through drama school. When they stood together on screen, there was no easy harmony between them. Burt feared being overshadowed, and Douglas was determined not to yield. Their first roles clearly mirrored their real-life personalities. Burt was Frankie Madison, strong and rugged, but deeply vulnerable. Douglas was Noel Turner, cold, sharp, and treacherous. Their confrontation scene, shot 19 times to get it right, became the emotional heart of the film. Off-screen, they vied for every frame, and it was this rivalry that forged a legendary duo. On set, Lancaster leveraged his acrobatic skills to propose daring stunts, and Douglas, despite pain, never backed down. This showed that they didn't just compete, they respected each other. I Walk Alone didn't win over critics, but audiences were captivated. The film was a huge hit, grossing $2.3 million, and turned them into a golden pair. That chemistry continued to explode in Gunfight at the OK Corral. Lancaster played Wyatt Earp, tall, dignified ideal for the image of an unwavering lawman. Douglas portrayed Doc Holliday, fiery, mysterious. Their contrasting personalities made every frame ignite. A legendary line resonated, "No knives, no guns, and no killing," sending shivers down viewers' spines. Even the hat Lancaster chose became iconic. On August 17, 1956, a tense scene was broken by their own laughter. The scene where Earp's character receives a gun from Holliday was so absurd that the two actors couldn't stop laughing. The scene had to be split to be completed, costing the studio $25,000, but the story became a behind-the-scenes legend. Then came the incident on June 23, 1957. Lancaster made a jab about Douglas's modest height, and Douglas burst into tears. A seemingly harmless joke touched a hidden childhood insecurity. Their relationship cooled. It wasn't until 7 days in May 1964 that they reconciled. Douglas later recounted the incident in his memoir with much emotion. When Gunfight at the OK Corral was released, the film grossed over $11 million, reaching a new peak. The 30-minute gunfight scene, filmed over 18 days using 5,000 blank rounds, left critics breathless. The film received 2 Oscar nominations. Lancaster continued to take risks with his role as Prince Selina in The Leopard 1963, a role everyone suspected he would fail. Yet he transformed himself, gaining weight, dyeing his hair, learning Italian by memory. He lived in Sicily, adopted the local accent, and embodied the Italian aristocrat to the extent that audiences thought he was native. The 6-hour dance scene involving 5,000 participants became the highlight of the $5 million film. At Cannes, the film ran over 200 minutes and received thunderous applause. The following year, he and Douglas reunited in 7 days in May, their 7th film. The story of a plot to overthrow the U.S. government was so sensitive that the Pentagon refused to provide support. But their chemistry still burned as fiercely as ever. Burt Lancaster's remarkable transformation. President John F. Kennedy, who had read the original book, endorsed 7 days in May. This allowed Lancaster to embody a tough general inspired by real military figures. A scene lasting over 7 minutes with Douglas was kept uncut, pure high-pressure acting. With a budget of $2.2 million, the film was a massive success, grossing over $3.6 million right when the Cuban Missile Crisis's aftermath was still palpable. Critics lauded the legendary duo, and audiences were captivated by the dangerous theme of military power. Later, Lancaster's career took a new direction. Entering the 1980s, he was no longer a symbol of muscular leading men, but an artist known for deeply introspective roles. Atlantic City 1980 was the first milestone. He transformed into an aging gangster lost in a changing world. The role earned him an Oscar nomination, proving that age couldn't dim his talent. Next, he surprised audiences in Local Hero as an eccentric boss, then in Scandal Sheet as a gritty tabloid editor. In 1986, he played a CIA agent in Control, a lesser-known but still bold role. In 1987, he returned with Rocket Gibraltar, embodying a loving grandfather surrounded by his large family, a warm and deeply human performance. Among these, Atlantic City remains a peak, where he displayed the profound depth of a man unable to let go of his past. The scene where he washes money with lemons alongside Susan Sarandon became iconic. A year later in Field of Dreams, even with a small supporting role as Dr. Moonlight Graham Lancaster, still moved audiences with the line, "We never know which moment in our lives is the most important when it's happening." In 1986, he reunited with Douglas in Tough Guys, their final film together. Though not a blockbuster, seeing two icons robbing a train together in their twilight years delighted fans. Lancaster still performed many of his own stunts, showing that his resilience had never waned. The cracks in the glamour. Aging wasn't easy for him. In 1983, he underwent heart surgery, then gallbladder surgery while filming Rocket Gibraltar. Despite advice, he returned to set after just 10 days. In Separate but Equal 1991, even after a stroke left him struggling to speak, he completed the role with therapy. Eventually, his health forced him to retire, but his spirit of dedication never faded. Lancaster's off-screen life was equally dramatic. He went through 3 marriages and had 5 children. His first marriage to June Ernst ended just as he became famous. His second wife, Norma Anderson, lived with him for over 2 decades, but their life was far from happy. They hid her pregnancy due to pressure from the studio, creating the image of Norma as a war widow. But the truth couldn't be concealed forever. Burt had numerous affairs, including a relationship with Marlene Dietrich and rumored ones with Deborah Kerr. Norma finally divorced him in 1969, accusing him of cruel treatment. Behind the star's glamour were irreparable cracks. After the divorce, Norma gained custody of their youngest child and most of his assets, totaling over $2 million. Burt remarried Susan Martin in 1990 when he was 77. They remained together until his death in 1994. Yet for Norma, in her Catholic faith, she continued to consider herself his wife forever. Despite being one of the most brilliant stars, Burt Lancaster lived a private life. Even his own son admitted his father rarely opened up. Perhaps his impoverished childhood in New York taught him to conceal his emotions. Rumors about his sexual orientation surrounded him for years, but he never once responded, only increasing public curiosity. Lancaster didn't just make films, he fought. He marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr., supported the civil rights movement, and campaigned for McGovern, even landing on President Nixon's enemies list. His strong political views often reflected in his bold roles like Elmer Gantry. He was the embodiment of artistic daring. As a former circus acrobat, he performed dangerous stunts in The Crimson Pirate, paving the way for a generation of actors like Tom Cruise or Jackie Chan. But he could also transform into a vicious gossip columnist in Sweet Smell of Success, a role that inspired future actors like De Niro or Pacino. The Giant Falls, a final legacy. Burt Lancaster passed away on October 20th, 1994, at the age of 80. A stroke 4 years prior had left him partially paralyzed, but he fought resiliently. When the final heart attack struck at his Los Angeles home, his wife was by his side but could not save him. His last role in The Phantom of the Opera, 1989, concluded a journey of nearly 5 decades of dedication. And his peculiar relationship with Kirk Douglas, a friendship, a rivalry, lasted from 1946 until the end of his life. They were both close friends and fierce rivals. When Lancaster died, Douglas called him a giant. Sidney Poitier praised him for his courage and social activism. Louis Malle recounted that Burt carried an energy that lit up the entire set, even when he was near the end of his life. Behind that glamour was a soul that never stopped fighting in art, in life, and in the memory of an entire generation. What are your thoughts on Burt Lancaster, a man who was both a brilliant flame on screen and a quiet shadow in real life? Do you think actors like him are slowly disappearing today? Share your feelings in the comments section. If you feel that behind-the-scenes stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming emotional journeys. Because there are many forgotten truths, and together we will delve deep to uncover them.